Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining us for Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. Cold front came through south central Alaska last night and snow levels fell quite a bit. This is the picture of Glen Alps parking lot at about 10:30 this morning, and they picked up about a good 3 inches of snow in the area there. And moving on to the satellite, yesterday we could see this storm system right down in here, the front swinging up to the coast, North Gulf Coast there, with the rain and moisture. Cold air back out over the Bering Sea, sweeping in, down, and initially coming down to the south, and then that swung up today right across south central late last night and early this morning. And looking at today, you can see it came right up, right across the Kenai Peninsula, another batch out here to the west, a couple of upper level lows, one back here, and then this one swinging through, and brought all the wind and the rain and the snow to much of the area here, all the way back out to the west, shifting northward today. Actually, thunderstorms developing as this band right through here came northward and hit the Alaska Range. A lot of thunderstorms, lightning strikes across the eastern areas. That spread up toward Eagle and Dawson in the afternoon. Even some thunderstorms back out to the west, Minchumina, on up to around Galena. A little more scattered over to the west than they were to the east here, where there was more of a thermal gradient. And then a little bit of moisture in the form of clouds in over the southeast coast, up along the Arctic coast, north slope. East winds 15 to 35 miles an hour, in some cases gusts as high as 40 miles an hour up at Kaktovik and Dead Horse in those areas. Fog, snow, kind of a wintry mix of precipitation going on up in there. Kind of showery, mostly cloudy, if not just overcast here out to the west. Lots of clouds out here over the Aleutians, kind of breaking up here over the southern Aleutians, maybe a little bit of sun coming out. All this moisture streaming northeastward, but some's going to slip through and come down across the Bering Sea and actually make its way into the southwest interior on Monday. Here's the chart for today, and a couple of low pressure centers in over the interior, high pressure down to the south, and that gradient here kicking those winds up 40 to 50 miles an hour. Gales in Cook Inlet, Kenai seeing gusts of 50 miles per hour today, and 45 miles an hour in Anchorage. But the strongest wind gusts, as this pulled northward and the thunderstorms developed, Delta had gusts of 53 miles per hour. Wind advisories out for this area. Fairbanks seeing gusts at the International Airport in Fairbanks as high as 45 miles an hour with blowing dust there. Not much precipitation getting into the Tanana Valley. Really not a good flow of south winds or the southerly winds. All the rain gets wrung out on the south side of the mountains there. So just some scattered sprinkles or showers up to the north. A little more extensive, you get away from the range there north of Fairbanks. Probably some more heavier precipitation and back out to the west. But the heaviest rainfall occurring Cordova and Yakutat. Cordova just a little over an inch in the last 24 hours, and Yakutat picking up about 1.15 in the last 24 hours. Kenai picking up a quarter of an inch of rain, and Homer had over half an inch of rain, and lesser amounts though as that front pushed through the panhandle. And watching another development here with that sliding northeastward and the upper level low back here over the southwest interior. So that's going to bring some more moisture up tonight, as we'll see, as that low center tracks right to about the Barren Islands area, Kamishak Bay. Rain will spread back in. Looks like the heaviest amounts now will slide up over the Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast areas, and then back along the Alaska Range, the way it looks at this point in time. But again, it'll be starting from the south, moving up to the north here, so back into the wet conditions. But winds won't be as strong as with the system that's now all the way up over the Northwest Territories. Look for a few lingering showers along the southeast coast, and still a lot of moisture up here along the Arctic coast, staying pretty gusty on the wind, especially on the east side, but diminishing back to the west. Winds diminishing also, especially along the Copper River Basin, Copper River area from those 35-mile-an-hour gusts earlier today. And in some cases, high as 40 miles an hour around Gulkana. Those will be diminishing tonight as the gradient relaxes. These winds probably good for small craft advisories in the marine areas, but again, nearly not the gradient with this next developing system as the one that came through last night. Another trough, lots of clouds, rain and snow showers, low visibilities here back along the west coast, and of course extending all the way up to the northwest areas. High pressure over the Aleutians, light winds, mostly cloudy skies, but dry. There, actually from the Alaska Peninsula all the way out to Shimya. Here's this moisture coming over the top of that high there. That's a lot of low clouds, fog, drizzle, and rain. That'll be spreading eastward and eventually southeastward. Tomorrow, just a big extensive area here of IFR, probably out over the Bering Sea, right up to the coastline. A few breaks tomorrow over the southwest interior. And this low tracking northeastward, beginning to weaken considerably, but still looks really good in the upper air. So that next front coming through, look for showers, rain or snow, pretty numerous here across all of the southern part of the interior. And that's sliding up into the Copper River Basin there. Wet conditions along the North Gulf Coast. Just look for rain tomorrow from just west of Yakutat all the way into the Kenai Peninsula. Drying out, northwest winds may result in some sunshine there down across Kodiak Island and even into southern Cook Inlet. But another batch of moisture here with that trough out to the west. Rain and snow showers, again, depending on your location, elevation, and time of day. But snow levels should be in that at least maybe as low as 1,200 feet tomorrow morning, coming up to about 2,000 feet in the afternoon hours. Fair over the southwest or the southeast coast. The Panhandle, partial clearing, variably cloudy skies, gusty northwest winds, especially along the southern areas, possibly as high as 20 miles an hour over the inside waters. And now we've got just a warm front heading northeastward here. Strong high pressure holding out over the Alaska Peninsula, so it looks pretty good out here with the Aleutians. Not too much in the way of wind, just a lot of low clouds and fog. And again, all the way up into the Bering Strait. Look for those winds to continue to diminish along the Arctic coast. Then for Monday, less moisture, but some still lingering around. A lot of showers here, cloudy skies and showers over the upper Yukon Valley, all the way down across the Tanana Valley and into the Copper River Basin. Again, snow levels are going to stay quite low here over the Copper River Basin. So places like Nebezna, Paxson, probably looking at precipitation mostly in the form of snow, especially during the overnight and early morning hours. Now this upper low actually pulling into the northeast Gulf, so that's going to spread those showers all the way down into at least the northern southeast coastal areas, but staying dry to the south and a little on the breezy side, but nothing too strong in the way of winds. High pressure holding over the Alaska Peninsula, beginning to rebuild now over the eastern Bering Sea areas, and again a big chunk of that moisture sliding southeastward. So look for cloudy skies, maybe some light rain, fog and drizzle. Fog and drizzle mostly out over Bristol Bay and along the coast there, but some of that will be even up into the southwest interior areas, but lower conditions, a little more widespread out over the northern Bering Sea to St. Lawrence Island. And fair now, maybe some sunshine over the northwest part of the state. It looks like this high is eventually toward the middle of the week going to build in, join up with that high up over in the northern areas. So once all this begins to pull out, should be will be replaced by high pressure gradually coming in. And so next week's looking pretty good as this storminess stays down to the south and that stays off to the southwest, but kind of catching the western Aleutians. Temperatures today, mid-40s to upper 50s over the southeast coast there, with 57 at Juneau, 49 here at Cordova. Yakutat not plotted there, but they were up to about 53 degrees this afternoon. Upper 40s, much cooler over the Cook Inlet area, 52 at Homer and 49 in Anchorage, 45 Talkeetna, and 62 up there at Fairbanks with those gusty south winds. Farther to the north, 39 Anatuvik, but 57 over at Arctic Village and 55 at Ambler with Galena at 47. 46 McGrath, same thing there at Sleepmute, and heaviest rainfall or heavier rain occurring along the Alaska Range, especially on the west side there. Sparivon carrying moderate rain at times today. which changed over from the snow they had this morning. Anyway, 31 degrees at Cape Lisburne, but the Arctic coast with those northeast winds in the upper 20s, 26 at Barrow, one of the colder locations, and then Galena, or Sparavon, not Sparavon, Savunga, I knew it began with an S, 37 degrees, 31 at Tin City, but up to 49 in Nome, 37 over there at Russian Mission, lower 40s along the southwest coast, and mid 40s here for the most part, Adak and Atka 45, 41 at Shemya, and 51 over at Cold Bay. For the lows tonight, 30s to lower 40s here. Pretty chilly over the southeast interior, and then upper 30s and 40s over the central interior, with 20s for the Arctic coast, maybe the north slope, 30s out here in the west, upper 30s for the Aleutians, 40 to 45 for the southeast coast. Highs for tomorrow, lower to mid 30s there for the Arctic coast and north slope, getting a little milder there in toward the Berks Range areas, and then upper 50s to near 60 over the Yukon Valley there, even down to the Tanana Valley. Otherwise, lower to mid 50s here south of the Alaska Range, in the 40s out over the western part of the state, Yukon, Kuskokwim Delta, all the way down into Bristol Bay under that chilly air mass, and 50s to near 60 for the Panhandle. Flying weather, again, that next system sliding northward, so IFR, at least to start out with, on the east side of Kodiak Island, spreading up toward the central Gulf Coast areas, and then breaking out behind that as that low center tracks up to the northeast, should become VFR with the southern Cook Inlet areas. Tomorrow afternoon, marginal VFR, big area IFR out here over the northern Bering Sea down to the Pribilofs, and then, gosh, looks like got just about the entire stretch of the Aleutian chain in VFR conditions, and on the opposite end of that, the entire eastern stretch of the Arctic coast from Barrow to demarcation point, IFR. Anatuvik, marginal VFR at times. Adigan, same thing, either approach, occasionally marginal. Lake Clark, starting out marginal, becoming VFR in the afternoon. Merrill, IFR becoming marginal. Same forecast for Rainy, IFR to marginal at times, actually throughout the entire day. Windy could see some IFR in that pass at times tomorrow. Isabel, though, VFR in the north entrance, marginal VFR at the pass and to the south. Mentasta, call it marginal. And Tanita, kind of going back and forth between marginal to IFR at times. And for Portage, IFR maybe becoming marginal in the afternoon, but Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels here showing cold air aloft now, about 2,000 feet over just about all of the state, but a warm pocket back up here over the northwest areas, up to 6,000 feet there. And the jet stream now shifting to the south. You can see quite a gradient here across the Panhandle, 2,000 to 8,000 feet down toward the Queen Charlottes, and that's where the jet will be riding right up in about that position. Icing threats, could see some occasional moderate rime icing with that next system, and then more of a mixed condition back here over the south central interior areas, but that drying out from west-southwest up to the northeast throughout the day, and then some lingering spotty stuff up to the north. Winds aloft chart showing low pressure here over the southwest coast, which today actually shifted into the southwest interior. This one will be spreading eastward as well, and that'll be replaced first part and into the week of next week by high pressure over the Bering Sea. They'll gradually spread in over the interior. And at 9,000 feet here, we've got that low at about this position coming into the southwest interior. Southwesterlies, 30 knots, mostly just east of Kodiak Island, coming up to the North Gulf Coast and then up into the interior. This wind max here associated with that low that came into the southern areas today, currently bringing the winds in the central interior. That'll be pushing up to that location tomorrow. Lighter westerly winds out to the west here with nothing but high pressure over the southern Bering Sea. And of course the Aleutians is 5 to 10 knot winds there, even at 3,000 feet. Very light wind conditions through here. Westerlies up to 20 knots, but again, the stronger winds will be with that first system, and then some easterlies at about 35, just catching the Barrow area, the central coast there, as the main gradient shifts up to the north. And for turbulence, occasional moderate chop here, Copper River Basin. Not too bad through the central interior, that system and those winds pulling off to the northeast. Pretty smooth over the Panhandle as well as the Aleutians. After the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
At In January of 1996, one of the most devastating winter storms in history slams the East Coast. 2 feet of snow dumps on New York and throughout the Northeast Corridor. Schools, airports, and roads are shut down. By the time it's over, the blizzard and resultant flooding caused $3 billion in losses, and 187 lives are taken. And in the Catskill Mountains of upstate New York, the snowmelt triggers another potentially devastating crisis. Stormwater runoff, contaminated with trash, dirt, fertilizers, and pesticides from nearby farms and communities, threatens the fresh water supply. And the Catskill system of reservoirs is vitally important, for it is the biggest watershed of New York City, providing drinking water to over 9 million people.
The miracle of the city's water supply system is largely unknown to most New Yorkers. You ask people, where does the water come from? Often people shrug their shoulders and say New Jersey.
I figured that we were probably our own separate water system than from upstate. I'd rather be drinking water from upstate than the Hudson River.
I don't know that most people are aware of how large the problem is and how close to crisis many of our water supply systems are.
To preserve the purity of the reservoirs and enforce the Safe Drinking Water Act, the Environmental Protection Agency presented the Big Apple with 2 options. Either build and maintain a $6 billion facility to filter all of the city's tap water, or fund a $1 billion program to protect the watershed from polluted runoff.
When it comes to our investment in clean air and clean water, preserving open space, fixing antiquated sewage treatment plants, we can't wait. It doesn't get any less expensive, it gets more expensive.
With the historic Watershed Agreement of 1997, an unprecedented upstate-downstate partnership was forged to protect the New York City water supply.
The Watershed Agreement is saving New York City billions of dollars.
The plan includes purchasing and preserving 355,000 acres of undeveloped watershed land, the upgrading of sewage treatment plants, and the protection and restoration of stream corridors.
What we're looking at here is a main tributary of the Esopus Creek. During flooding, we were seeing a lot of sediment coming out of the stream. The clay gets into the water column and it becomes very turbid, and then it makes it very difficult to treat and clean that water. So from a water quality perspective, we're very concerned about erosion.
The program also provides funding for farmers that implement agriculture management practices.
Well, we have a very exciting program with the Watershed Agricultural Council where we are working with local farmers. We look at how they're handling the animals so that the runoff associated with manure, fertilizer, and that farm activity isn't getting into the streams around our reservoirs.
This water here is basically the water you're going to be drinking down in the city. And I feel I've got a responsibility to try my best to keep it clean for when it gets down there. It used to be when it rained here on the farm, the water that ran away from the back of the barn here was full of mud, manure, and it would just run brown and right into the stream. 2 years ago, we would spread every day. We'd have to take it out, spread it on the fields. If the snow was deep, we spread it on the snow, and unfortunately, if the ground was froze when the snow melted, the nutrient value of it for fertilizer was gone. It wound up down in the reservoir.
With New York City funding, a secure above-ground steel tank that can hold 400,000 gallons of manure was installed on the Meadowbrook farm.
That's enough storage for 6 months of the year. Now we can store it, spread it when it'll do the most good to us for fertilizer, and we don't have to spread it every day.
I worked with Tim on the plan to develop the improvements we're going to make. Plan really belongs to the farmer, and it's a collaboration of their ideas and what technical advice we can bring to the program. But the farmer makes the decision.
It's a program that seems to make everybody happy.
Here's to the farmers who are working so hard to make sure we've got clean water to put in our coffee.
To guarantee the city's water supply is fresh at the tap, comprehensive tests are performed by the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, both in the lab and at over 1,000 sampling stations throughout the city.
New York City has probably one of the most extensive water quality monitoring programs in the nation, if not the world.
We're sampling every day, 365 days a year. I've been drinking this water for 53 years. Nothing else. Best water in the world. New York City, straight from the tap to my lips.
Coming up, the future of our water supply remains at risk, but there's something everyone can do to help protect it. Find out how next. To keep our watersheds free of pollutants will require the actions of every citizen, community, and business.
Paved concrete surfaces, asphalt, parking lots, sidewalks. The question is, do we need to have as many as we do? Because to the extent that you have too much impervious surface, the water is not retained on site. It doesn't soak into the ground. It runs off, picks up speed, carries pollutants and contaminants into the water body.
One strategy for preventing stormwater runoff is occurring at the new Ford Rouge Center in Dearborn, Michigan. This remodeled truck plant is covered by a green roof the size of 8 football fields. Planted with a porous ground cover, it reduces the amount of polluted runoff released into the watershed.
The thing that tends to get the most attention is the 10-acre green roof, but that's really just part of a philosophy that if an area does not have to be paved or built upon, it's going to be green space.
And communities are also implementing green space strategies, such as rain gardens.
They sloped the lot in such a manner that all the flow goes towards this landscaping, where basically the polluted runoff can percolate into the ground and get filtered rather than going straight onto the street, into the storm drain system, and really a very simple approach to cleaning up our runoff in urban areas.
But perhaps the most powerful course of action is individual participation.
People need to take responsibility for the state of our waters, and water conservation is one area where they can do that as a committed citizen. All those things your mom told you, take a short shower, don't let the water tap run while you're brushing your teeth.
Taking your household hazardous waste to a cleanup and recycling day. Don't wash your car on the streets and put all those suds down into the drain.
When you change or use motor oil, you don't dump it into the street. Everybody's got to clean up after their pets. Obviously, that's a big concern. Fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, and make sure you don't use them anytime there's any chance of rain coming up in the near future. When you're irrigating your lawn and your garden, make sure that you're not overspraying and causing all those chemicals to end up getting into the storm drain system. The only way we're going to solve the problem is if everybody does their part.
We all live in a watershed. We all have an impact on our environment. And we must all play a role in the protection and restoration of our valuable water resources. To learn more about how you can get involved and to get a free brochure called After the Storm, visit epa.gov/Weather Channel.
Welcome back. We'll look for small craft advisories here over the southern marine areas of the Panhandle, dropping back to west to southwest, in some cases south, only about 15 knots there for Lynn Canal. And then for Monday, pick the winds up a little bit there, south 22 in the afternoon, northwest at about 20 knots, still enough of a gradient to keep it pretty breezy down here over the southern southeast coast, but again lighter and more westerly up to the north. Then for Sunday, south central Alaska, excuse me, westerlies 15 to 20 knots across Kodiak, taking a turn to the northeast here at about the same speed. Getting a little more variable to easterly and lighter in over Prince William Sound. And tomorrow, you can see much lighter winds than what we had today here throughout Cook Inlet. And then on Monday, really light winds continue, variable to generally west to east in the flow here, 10 knots over the northern areas. 15 knots off the North Gulf Coast back down toward Kodiak Island. And for the Alaska Peninsula, look for west winds at about 15 knots here tomorrow, otherwise west-northwest, 15 to maybe 20 knots as you get up toward, well, into this marine zone here, and about the same west 20 knots there for Bristol Bay. And then it becomes really light and variable for the peninsula tomorrow night and Monday, just variable winds, high pressure, light winds also for Bristol Bay, generally from the southwest and west or variable to west, only 10 knots there from Sitkinak to Chignik. And for the eastern Aleutians, light variable winds there tomorrow, and again that'll slip over to the Alaska Peninsula the following day. Otherwise east-southeast at about 15 knots for the central Aleutians, a little closer to that front that's out to the west and southwest, 20-knot winds for Shemya. And then those will turn southeast at about 20. You could see some small craft advisories here, but that will be west of Adak. Otherwise 15-knot winds for the central Aleutians. Really light easterlies there for the Fox Islands. And the Pribilofs tomorrow, variable at 10, south 20 knots here for the northern Bering Sea. Otherwise west-southwest 15 to 20 knots with the strongest winds here south of Nunivak Island blowing in toward Kuskokwim Bay. For Monday, even lighter winds, 5 to 10 knots here across the Bering Sea down to the Pribilofs, and 5 to 10 knots here north of Nunivak Island, 15 knots to the south, with seas running generally just 3 to 4 feet, in some cases maybe even flatter than that. For the Arctic coast, still pretty brisk tomorrow on those winds. Brisk wind advisories there, just about the entire stretch of the coastline. West 15, Tin City up to Point Hope. And then for Monday, more of a south-southwest breeze in that area. Southwest all along the coast here, but not too bad, maybe up to 20 knots here for this zone. Otherwise south 10 knots for the central coast, but coming down gradually, but probably hang on to those brisk wind advisories at least for a portion of the day Monday there for the Kaktovik area in that marine zone. For the forecast tonight, another system developing, moving northeastward here with the upper trough over the southwest, gradually shifting eastward. So more rain coming into the North Gulf Coast, maybe a little bit of pickup in the wind, but nothing like we had with the last storm that's now up here to under the label and up along the north slope with some gusty winds and rain, snow, a mixture of any of those here all the way back and then down along this trough in the west. High pressure, as I mentioned, over the Aleutians. A lot of this moisture just sliding in over the top of this high here, so it's going to bring a lot of IFR, especially over the northern Bering Sea, up to the coast. Maybe breaking out in the afternoon a little ways inland, but wet conditions, rain the North Gulf Coast, all the way back to the Alaska Range. Low snow levels will continue, and that's starting to shift up into the Copper River Basin. And Monday morning, late Sunday night, pretty good chance of some snow over much of that area. Let's look at the weather. Have a great evening.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.